Good morning, everybody. This is the TSMU fan here, and today I want to talk about a crazy revelation that we only discovered recently. When I tell you this, you aren't going to believe it, but Season 5 of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends has a lost episode.
What?
Yep, you heard me right. An episode of which the entire first draft script was written out for by David Mitton, but the episode never made it into the production stages. This episode's script was first revealed in a live stream on October 3rd by a YouTube channel under the name of Valesbridge Productions. Fellow fandom member Wharf Scale Cranky, who is a part of the Valesbridge Productions YouTube channel, ended up winning the Season 5 script lot in the Brit Allcroft collection by Julian's Auctions. And there were a lot of crazy reveals in the early scripts that were in the lot, such as Duke being planned to appear in all of the Narrow Gauge Engines' episodes, Thumper exploding in Rusty and the Boulder, which properly explains why we never end up seeing him again in the show afterwards, the village being planned to flood originally in Toby and the Flood, which we did end up seeing in concept art by Robert Gauld Galliers before the scripts were leaked, the old manor that Oliver discovers in Oliver's Find being called Oliver House. I swear, they need to come up with better names for these places. Rusty being referred to as female before his gender was changed in Season 9 for the US dub specifically. Cranky Bugs originally being planned to end on a freeze frame, which is hilarious. The list goes on. The reveals were all mind-blowing to us fans, but the craziest one, by far, was the lost episode script that was included, which was saved until the end of the stream, since the intention was to save the best for last. This episode's name? James and Super ED. So without further ado, let's jump into what the plot of this canceled episode was going to be. The plot of James and Super ED begins with Thomas, Percy, and Edward all working at the docks. While James is assigned to bring the loaded trucks to the hopper, James hated doing this work, since it made his paintwork filthy. The tipper's loading ramp that we see in Middle Engine from Season 6 seemed to have gotten its roots here, but it was probably a reworked idea, as the description of the hopper here doesn't exactly match how the hopper in Season 6 looks. The hopper here is described as a huge slanting tower. A truckload of coal would be pushed onto the hopper's platform at the base of the tower, then this platform would be mechanically lifted to the top entrance where men would guide the truck to the tipper. The truck was then lifted and tipped into a special hopper, and the empty was then returned to ground level, which was a slight slope. The empty then propelled itself out of the way so another full one could take its place. It does seem very similar to the plant in Season 6 onwards, especially with the description of lifting the trucks up mechanically, but the workman pushing the trucks part is new and doesn't match. While it's not confirmed, it's possible that David Mitton might have used the Barry Island coaling tip as inspiration for this idea, as seen in this photo. It's all just speculation though, since we don't have a clear idea on an actual basis. Anyways, James brings the loaded trucks to the hopper, and is in a very bad mood about it, when suddenly, lightning strikes the hopper, causing it to go haywire. It lifts the two front trucks connected to James, and they both tip over, derailing him in the process and covering him in coal dust. James is sent away to the works to be mended, and in his place, Sir Topham Hatt trials a diesel in the yards. The diesel, known as ED, is not as powerful as he looks, and continually breaks down. It's possible that the diesel's name is an acronym for electro-diesel, which is a real type of diesel engine that can be powered either from an electricity supply or by using the onboard diesel engine. Knowing this information, it's possible that ED is either a British Railways Class 73 or a Class 74. I'm willing to bet that he was going to be a 74 though, since a contributing factor in the lack of reliability of the Class 74 was the electronic systems, particularly the lack of robustness of the printed circuit boards, the way they were mounted, and the connections there too. Anyways, ED is working in the yards at the coaling plant when yet another bolt of lightning strikes the rail in front of him, and you won't believe what happens next. The bolt of lightning powered him up and pretty much gave him superpowers. I'm not kidding, the script literally says For some reason, the electric shock from the lightning had converted ED into Super ED. Now instead of only managing to pull a few trucks, he could pull masses of them at one go. What is even going on right now? The lightning shock powered him up and now he's like Superman or something. This is insanity! So then what happens is that Sir Topham Hatt is so impressed with Super ED that he tries him out on the Express and manages to put Gordon's speed record in danger. The engines all shunned James when they found out just how good ED was doing, and James has to sleep with Super ED, who is quite the chatterbox. The next day, Gordon is waiting outside the station for his train to be ready when Super ED comes up and starts bragging to him. Then, for the third time, another lightning bolt strikes, hitting Gordon's front buffer and ricocheting onto Super ED, causing him to malfunction and emit black smoke from his engine covers. Huh? Gordon literally just pulled an Emperor Palpatine here on Super ED. What is going on? But oh man, it gets even better. So Topham Hatt comes out, sees the smoke billowing into the station and says, "Get rid of that smoke. If it's an engine, it should be scrapped. I'll see to that, you mark my words." What the heck? Sir Topham Hatt scrapped him? It wasn't even his fault that he malfunctioned. The lightning hit him. Is Sir Topham Hatt literally blaming ED for something that Mother Nature did? Also, Sir Topham Hatt couldn't even see who was making the smoke. What if it was one of the main characters or something? Gosh dang, this version of Sir Topham Hatt is cruel. So after that, Gordon and James take Super ED away, and he never worked again after that. As the script says itself, it was then the end for Super Ed. Gordon becomes everyone's hero, makes sure that James is let back into the sheds, and James learns to behave much better after that. The end.
That's it? That's the last episode?
So now we'll move on to my thoughts on this canceled Season 5 episode. I'm just in absolute disbelief that this exists. When I was watching the live stream, I was seriously thinking that this script was AI generated. It just didn't feel real, but it was. And holy crap, it's insane. What even is this episode? What was David Mitton on when he was writing this? I definitely think that Britt was 100% in the right to cancel this episode. While other episodes she canceled, such as The Missing Coach, might have some stuff going for them, such as setting up Donald and Douglas's fear of getting scrapped and having one get sent away without the other, this story really doesn't have anything going for it. It's completely bonkers, totally unrealistic, and feels more like an episode of Big World, Big Adventures than it does Season 5. I will say though, as unrealistic as most of this story is, I do like that some of it does still have realistic elements applied to it, such as the coaling tip and the way it's described. You can tell that David did some research into real-life coaling tips to get an idea of what he wanted to feature to have James get into an accident. I also like that he brought the idea of an electric-powered diesel engine into this script, which is something that I'm surprised that the TV series never did before or after this. It definitely fits in well, seeing as the Peel-Goddard branch line in the Railway series is run by electric diesel engines, none of which we actually see in any illustration. I also like that it features a pretty fun crash, which, now that I think about it, might have been the inspiration for Percy's incident in the Season 6 episode Middle Engine. I mean, both episodes were stories that David Mitton came up with. Additionally, lightning causing trouble also didn't end up going unused in the series either, as the old windmill in Toby's windmill from Season 7 also gets struck by it, which destroys it, and that episode was also a Mitten story. In fact, it was the last one that he came up with the storyline for. Overall though, this story is pretty crazy, and doesn't really feel like something that would be in Season 5 of Thomas. Season 5 is particularly crazy with a lot of stuff going on, but this is just way too far in my opinion. So if I were to change this episode to make it better, and make it into an actual episode that would fit the standard 4-minute 30-second runtime of a regular Thomas episode, how would I do it? Let's take a look. So let's start off with the opening of the episode. I do really like how it starts, with James shunting at the docks, which leads into his accident at the coaling tip. However, we can't have this segment take too long, so I would cut out all the stuff at the start about just how much everyone admires James, and just have the episode start with him shunting at the docks. Similar to how James in The Trouble with Trees jumps right into Thomas working at the coal mines. I'd still have the description of what the hopper does, but streamline it a lot more. Then James has his accident, and Sir Topham Hatt ends up bringing ED onto the scene. ED being faulty at first, but then powering up is kind of the whole highlight of this episode, but unfortunately, this is probably something that we'll have to cut out, as I really have no idea on how to work it in realistically. So let's just say that ED isn't faulty when he arrives, since it's too similar to Derek in Double Teething Troubles anyway. I do, however, like the Super ED name that they gave him after he powers up, so maybe he performed so well on the mainland that they ended up giving him that nickname. The title of being Super, however, goes to ED's head, making him quite the show-off when he arrives on Sodor, threatening Gordon's speed record and proving to handle the Express with ease. I feel like this would be a classic thing to work into this episode. An engine gets a big head from being praised or whatever, and then they get their own comeuppance later. It's not too dissimilar to what Audrey does in his stories. See Thomas Comes to Breakfast, Percy Takes the Plunge, Bullseyes, Resource and Sagacity, the list goes on. The engines get angry with James for causing this to happen. Now, I think that it should be pretty clearly established that the accident at the beginning of the episode isn't caused by lightning. Maybe it's because James wants to rush his job so that he doesn't get his paint dirty and ends up getting into the accident that way. Doing it this way, the engines are now blaming James for something that was entirely his own fault and not something that was out of James's control. You could show a little bit of James having to stay with ED that night, but it would most likely just be some quick lines from the narrator to keep things moving instead of ED bragging to James. The next morning, James is waiting at the station for his next train to be ready, and this is when you show ED bragging to James, talking about how modern he is and how useful he is to Sir Topham Hatt. Then, if we were to incorporate lightning doing him in the scene, it would strike James's buffer and not Gordon's. I think that Gordon was such a random choice to have ED done in by, and I really think that if it was James instead, the payoff would have been so much more concrete. So Topham Hatt comes out and sees ED malfunctioning and orders for him to be sent away back to the mainland in disgrace instead of being scrapped. You could probably still feature Gordon in this scene. Perhaps he's the one who sees what happened and congratulates James afterwards for inadvertently taking care of ED. We then show an ending scene where the narrator explains that the engines let James back into the sheds, and Gordon says,
"It's good to have you back, James. I knew that you were a splendid engine, but I didn't think it was that shocking."
The episode ends with everyone, including James, having a good laugh, with James learning to be more careful and not rush his jobs to stay clean. Now, I think that this is a much better way to handle this episode. Now it's not so unrealistic, which is a problem that made Britt scrap this story. There's setup and payoff for James now, and it even ends on a funny joke, similar in a way to how episodes like Bah or Lady Hatt's Birthday Party end. I think that these changes would make this episode a lot more super, that's for sure. So in conclusion, my final thoughts on James and Super ED are that it's crazy, unrealistic, and just bonkers all the way around. But at the same time, there are elements in this that are real, which I mentioned earlier, putting the story in this weird middle ground between grounded in reality and being unrealistic at the same time. And I think that this is ultimately what Britt meant when she wrote, "Is this realistic?" on the third page of the episode's script. While most of it is grounded in realism and starts out fine, once ED powers up, the story goes completely off the rails. Pun intended. James and Super ED is definitely an interesting story, but overall, its removal by Brit was for the best in the end, because I'm sure that if this story was actually produced and a part of this season, people would look at Season 5 in a completely different light as to how they do now. This will definitely go down as one of the craziest moments in Thomas history, knowing that there's an episode of Season 5 that was lost to time. And if it wasn't for Wharf Scale Cranky winning these scripts in the Britt Allcroft collection, we would have never found out about James and Super ED, the craziest Lost Thomas episode the fandom has ever seen. And with that, I think that will just about do it for this video. I know that a lot of people have already made videos talking about James and Super ED, Unlucky Tug being one of them, but I figured I'd make my own video still so that I could share with you guys just what I thought of this Lost episode. What do you guys think about James and Super ED? Go ahead and feel free to share your thoughts about the episode in the comments. Anyways, I'll wrap the video up here. Thanks everybody so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this one, and I'll see you all in the next video. This is the TSMU fan, signing out. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters Master Painter and Railway Series 64, and I give an extra special thanks to those patrons of mine who have chosen to remain anonymous. If you'd like to learn how to get your name at the end of every new video that I upload, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Link is on my channel homepage under my channel description.